Well, hi everyone, and welcome to today's workshop. This is the Headshot Secrets online workshop with our host Aaron Marcus and his special guest Joe Henson. Before we get into this workshop talking about all the different things you need to know about headshots, let me introduce our special host, Aaron Marcus. Aaron is America's premier acting and commercial modeling career coach. He's also a top-selling author and founder of HowToModel.com, one of Google's top-ranked acting and modeling career sites. Aaron Marcus has been a full-time actor and commercial model for over 26 years. To date, he has been cast 1,183 times. You've seen Aaron in projects such as Burn After Reading, Law & Order, Criminal Intent, The West Wing, Crybaby, America's Most Wanted, Molson Beer, McDonald's, Kmart, A Modest Suggestion, HBO's The Wire, and even ads for Disney World. Aaron Marcus has appeared in print ads throughout the United States, Europe, the Netherlands, and Asia. He's written what many consider the most important book for commercial modeling entitled How to Become a Successful Commercial Model, and it's now in its 5th edition. He also writes and publishes the Tear Sheet newsletter, a quarterly commercial modeling and acting newsletter. Aaron, welcome to today's workshop.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here and to have my special guest, Joe Henson, who is just an incredible headshot photographer. He's based in New York. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Aaron, how are you?
Good, really good. Hey, so let me tell everybody what you do and also what we did for this particular online workshop. Just so everybody knows, like I mentioned, Joe is based in New York, and he has shot over 16,000 headshots. And that's literally 16,000 headshots so far. And certainly he does travel a bit, going into various cities, but you can even check out his work later on today. It's joehenson.com, just JOEHENSON.com, and you can see a lot of his work. What I decided to do for this particular online workshop, it's a little bit different, but I thought it would be great. I wanted people to get an opportunity to watch me go into Joe's studio and basically pose as a very beginner, somebody who's trying to figure out how to find a photographer, what kinds of questions to ask, what kinds of answers should you be getting, what things to look for, and basically give people a really, really clear idea and example of what it's like to interview different headshot photographers. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to start showing you part of the interview, and then we're going to break away and talk a little bit, and then we'll go back to the interview. We'll be doing that throughout the day. So why don't we get started? And this is from last week in Joe's studio in New York.
So Joe, hi, I'm Aaron Marcus.
Hey, Aaron, how are you doing?
Good, doing real well. I've heard great things about your headshots, and so I'm just getting started in the acting world, and I know that I need an 8x10 headshot. I was told you're the guy to see here.
Good.
So I came up with, I've got like a bunch of questions for you, if it's all right.
Sure, fire away. I'm happy to answer anything.
Okay, great. So here's my situation. I'm just getting started, and I know that I need an 8x10. Honestly, I'm really not sure what to do during this meeting and what to do afterwards if, I wind up getting the headshot soon.
All right, well, let's start with the basics, okay? The first thing you need to tell me is what kind of work are you interested in? My job is to help you take the kind of work that you're after and define you in a way that's useful and appropriate for the kinds of, to project the kind of information that will help people who can hire you understand what it is about you that is interesting or unique or strong.
So you would want to hear, like, I'm interested in doing TV commercials, I'm interested in doing film work, I'm interested in doing television shows. That's the kind of information you're looking for.
Because some of my clients have a very specific set of areas that they're interested in, and most of my clients want the widest range of possible ways of presenting themselves so that it opens up every opportunity that they might have in every market.
And can I have one headshot that would cover TV commercials and film and movies, or do I need separate
Normally, you need separate shots. However, depending on a specific type of person, you might be able to get a shot that blends over into another area and works as well in the other area. I like to define those areas separately and see where they blend in the actual shoot so that we've covered everything that you need out of your session, so that each look is useful and appropriate for the kind of work you want to do.
Well, since I really have no idea what kind of shot I should be getting, typically, should I be looking at other headshots of actors that you've shot, that are kind of in my category to get a general idea?
The best homework that you can do to prepare for a shoot is to begin to understand what it is about you that would be of interest to the people who can hire you. And that takes identifying yourself in your market. A good photographer can aid you in defining that and understanding it. It's very hard to look at your own face and see what other people see in it.
So how would I go about doing that?
Well, part of it comes from feedback that you get from people that you work with, maybe teachers, agents that you have contact with, friends. You can get that information from a lot of different sources, and the goal is to combine it into something that seems to make sense.
So would it be helpful for me, let's say, like to watch some TV commercials, and if I see, a dad, or if I see a doctor, and I think, oh, wait a minute, that's something I think that I can do. I think that's right for me. That would be a good way of going about trying to figure out
Absolutely.
my type.
There are very defined types out there. The people who cast from clear little boxes of definitions of people, because audiences perceive people in a way that is it's like a universal consciousness. When a character walks out on a stage, I bet if you polled that audience, 99% of them would know what kind of person that is before they've even spoken.
So, and not to kind of put you on the spot here, but I don't know if this is something that photographers would generally do. So I'm in your place right now. Would you give me some feedback? Like, would you look, at me and say, okay, well, I could imagine you doing this type of role, this kind of role. Is that something that I can expect?
Yeah. And I can kind of give you a little breakdown of what I see in you right now, and it could help you understand how casting people might see you too. All right, so the first kind of breakdown that I do with people is, are they more on the real side, or are they more on the fantasy side?
Well, I know I'm the fantasy kind of guy.
Right. The fantasy side of people usually involve extreme beauty, which you obviously had, and are the focal point of usually a romance type of perspective in any kind of medium, whether it's film, TV, theater. There are those people who are the allure people. The other people are the real people, the people who are more realistic, believable, down to earth. That's where your strength is. Mm-hmm. So in that down to earth, real category, you can refine your idea of yourself through maybe exaggerating some of the qualities. Like, you have the kind of face where expressiveness and quirkiness can come into play, and it's a strength of yours. Everybody should understand that whatever they are can be made into a strength if they learn how to grab a hold of it and use it in the best way possible. Mm-hmm. Not the goal of your picture is not to make you the most attractive person on earth. It's to make you the most compelling person on earth. It's to have somebody look at you and go, wow, I get what that guy could do. And I know how to sell a product with him, or I know how to create a character with him.
So it seems like, Joe, the most important thing to take out of this is that, in some ways, if you can think about what kind of job would you get hired to do? What kind of roles are going to be right for you? If you're a student, what kind of roles will you be getting as that particular student? And then that's the type of headshot, and that's the kind of look that you want to put together.
Right, absolutely. It's the idea is, how does the public perceive me? That's what you want to play to. Not what you want to be, but what people see you as. And if you can understand that and capture it accurately, then you're going to be in play for the kind of roles that you're most right for.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's go back to the interview.
And so let's say you show me a headshot of somebody that you've already taken that's in my category.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who knows nothing about photography, or even if I'm just flipping through your book, I don't really know what to look for. I don't know anything about f-stops and different kinds of lighting and angles. So for somebody like me, what should I be looking for when I'm looking at a photographer's book to get an idea of, is this somebody, that I should be shooting with?
Well, the technical aspect of photography is a difficult part for anybody who's looking for a photographer, because it's outside their realm of expertise. It's like me going into a mechanic's shop and opening up the hood of a car. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know a carburetor from a hole in the ground, but I think that most people get a strong sense of whether or not the pictures are appealing, whether there is a general aesthetic value where you think, wow, these pictures look really good. They should look good even upside down. They should just have a nice balance. They should have a nice framing. They should have a nice energy. They should have a nice range of tones. They should have the most important aspect is contact. They should contact the viewer. They should reach out to the person and grab hold of their attention. That comes through a combination of aesthetic stuff, and it comes through your ability to convince the person who's looking at the picture that you're looking back at them.
So a lot of it's going to be in the eyes as to whether that person's really talking to you, in a sense, whether you have some sense of whether you can categorize that person, whether they look real and believable, or do they just kind of look like, an actor just posing for the camera with a blank stare on their face.
Right. Well, there's a big difference between someone who's the victim of a picture, where they're just basically having a shot imposed upon them, and someone who is generating some sort of a contact from their own self, from their own core. The ability to make that projection can be something that comes naturally to some people. It's the people who are good at flirting, the people who are good at making eye contact in a bar are usually pretty good at dealing with a camera. People who are shy have a much harder time looking directly into that electronic eye and not feeling intimidated or not feeling that it makes them ill at ease.
So basically, if I'm just getting started, I've never done this, I'm not good in bars, I'm not good at flirting, I'm looking into that electronic eye, I'm going to need help. Is that something that I can expect from you or any photographer?
It's definitely the reason that I'm in business, is that I understand that that's part of my responsibility to facilitate an environment and a set of techniques that allow you to relax into making that contact.
So I guess really the most important thing is, look, there are a lot of great shooters out there, people who can take incredible photographs, but the bottom line is you've got to find somebody that, number one, you are comfortable with, and also someone who creates an atmosphere and someone who can allow you to feel comfortable in front of a camera.
Well, it's very important part of this. You know, photography, creating a great picture that communicates to people is all about human interaction. And if you feel comfortable with the photographer, it's going to translate into how you approach the camera. It's a critical aspect of photography is that you need to feel loose to make it happen correctly. And so the photographer's responsibility is to set a mood and a tone that allows you to feel comfortable and that you don't have to protect yourself from that person, that they're encouraging a loose quality that'll come through in how you're perceived in the photograph.
Great. So let's go back to the interview.
One of the things that I've been told about your work, and I can't remember, somebody gave me some number one time of how many headshots you've taken that just seemed, it was like unbelievable.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's 16,000 people. That's a real amount.
16,000.
I calculated it by the amount of people I shoot a year and the amount of time I've been shooting, and the amount of wall space that the contact sheets and DVDs take up.
Because what I've been told, that one of the reasons why people love shooting with you is that you have this ability to make people feel very comfortable, make them feel at ease, even in these kinds of unusual situations, especially for people who might not have done this stuff before. And you also have the ability to figure out who that person is very quickly and either say the right words, coach them along during the photo session, so you bring out that personality. Almost like you're kind of like a therapist, you know, behind a camera instead of a couch.
Yeah.
And so I guess that is something that, you know, if somebody is a great headshot photographer, that is a skill that they absolutely need to have.
It's a strange skill. It's what it is you're born with your face, and throughout your lifetime, what you are, what you feel, what you go through, begins to impose itself on your face. And someone who's attuned to that aspect of how to look at somebody. I say on my website that my goal is to be a face whisperer. And it really is true. That I feel like if I look at somebody carefully, I can tell a lot about them. And it helps me connect with them. It helps me know how to behave with them. I'm not the same with every person I shoot. You know, I do try to create a similar circumstance for most people, which is having them feel loose, having them feel unjudged, having them feel supported. You know, the best thing that you can do in a photo session is let someone know that they're free to do anything they want. There's always a delete button on the camera. You want people to feel loose enough to let that side of themselves go.
And I guess when you're talking about the delete button, I guess one of the beauties of today's technology is that, you know, people are always concerned, especially years ago, you know, when everybody was shooting with film, well, it's like, I wonder what this session was like. Because it might have felt good, but they have no idea. So in today's time, and I guess with the way that you work, are people able to actually see the photos while it's taking place so they know whether they like it or don't like it?
The greatest thing about digital photography is the fact that it's immediate feedback. That has made my job so much easier. I can't even tell you the effect that it's had on my ability to set my client at ease, my ability to fine-tune what each shot is about, to look at the technical sides and make that better, and to look at what the person's doing and identify the best way to improve what they are projecting.
So if we were shooting together during the photo session itself, you would stop and we'd walk over, take a look at some of the shots, You would say what's working, what's not working, how to do things differently.
Yeah, normally what I do is start off by taking a couple of test shots. Those shots tell me angles that are best for each person's face. And it helps me identify any trouble spots in how they look in a frozen image. How you feel inside is not always what comes through outside. And so there's a little translation process. It's what models learn over the repetition of doing photo shoots over a long period of time. They begin to see the difference between what it feels like to them and what it comes out like to a camera. And they close that distance by learning techniques, or it can be something as simple as how they hold their eyebrows, or what they do with the corners of their mouth, or what they do in terms of just the projection of their face through space. My job is to be aware of all those techniques and supply them to each person in a way that fills a need.
And so typically for a headshot session, how long of a time period are we talking about?
The funny thing about headshots, about what makes a good headshot, it's not time-based, it's not quantity-based, it's quality-based. Because someone takes 5,000 shots doesn't mean they're going to get a better picture than someone who could take one great shot by the application of their knowledge and their experience and their energy and their ability. So, when I see photographers' websites, a lot of times I see in the definition of how they shoot, it'll say unlimited exposures or unlimited changes. I don't really understand that. I mean, I don't think that's necessary. It's not necessary to shoot an unlimited amount of exposures to get a good one. My goal is to be like a Zen master of photography. What I want my price sheet to say one day is one exposure will be taken. And, that put everything I know into that one exposure. It scares people that they're not going to get a ton of overload of images, but if they start to see that the pictures I take right from the beginning are fantastic, they just relax into it.
I know a lot of times people will ask, about, how many photos, should be taken at the session. And, what I walked away from after, talking with you is that, certainly it's a okay question to ask, but the number itself really is irrelevant. If somebody says, well, I'm going to shoot, 400 photos during the session, or I'm going to shoot, 800. Well, do you want to go with the person with the 800? Look, what you mainly want to do is make sure that whoever is shooting you is producing incredible shots. And so if it takes 75 shots to do it, or 100 or 50, who cares? The most important thing is just making sure you get the right photo.
Right. Photography is not a quantity event. It's all about quality. And although people who are unfamiliar with the process seem to be impressed by the larger numbers of how many photographs are taken, that really doesn't guarantee you anything. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite listings on photographers' websites is unlimited photographs will be taken, or unlimited changes, which I'm not really sure what that means. But what is important to me is not the amount, but the quality. And if one great shot can be taken with ease and with skill, it's going to trump 1,000 attempts at doing a photograph and relying on a happy accident to create the right image.
Sounds good. Okay, let's go back to the interview.
Just to maybe give us a general idea of how many exposures somebody can expect to have taken during a session? I mean, is it 100 photos, 50 photos? I mean,
I kind of judge it by how many looks we're shooting.
Okay, well, let's just say for one headshot.
If I'm going to do a one-look shoot, I'd say I'd take 100 pictures. I would probably take less if I had my druthers, but I want the people to feel that they're getting a lot of options, even though the differences between each shot are very minor, fine-tuned differences. I don't have a lot of chaos in my shoots. It's not like somebody's, moving back and forth and doing 1,000 expressions. I identify the best expressions and fine-tune them and work with them, and then go to something else and fine-tune that and work with it. So I'd say 100 shots per look is plenty.
And so typically you will talk with, and when I say you, I guess maybe I should also say just in general with photographers, do you guys look at wardrobe ahead of time? Do you look at wardrobe the day of the shoot? And then is that your responsibility to make the decisions?
Well, definitely I make suggestions up front. I send each of my clients who sign up an email that has suggestions on the kind of wardrobe they should pull together. Also, the great thing about the ability to work with like smartphones, people nowadays can, if they're shopping, they can take a picture and email it to me or text it to me, and I can weigh in right then and there on whether or not they should buy that piece for their shoot, or they can lay out stuff on their bed from their wardrobe and take a shot of it and show me, and I'll tell them if I think they're right or wrong. But the general guidelines that I put into my emails should make it pretty clear to each person what they should bring and what would be a useful way of defining the type they're projecting and something that looks good with their coloring and who they are.
Are there any, in general terms, any colors, patterns, certain things that you would say definitely never bring for a headshot?
There's some basic rules that can be broken depending, but the basic rule is don't wear anything that's more interesting than you. If you're trying to sell a piece of clothing, then make the clothing the focal point of the picture. That's not what headshots are about. Headshots are about selling the person, and so you want the clothing to support the idea, but not take over and not attract more attention than it should. So I would say stay away from busy patterns, bold prints, anything jarring, contrasty. But there are some times when something like that might be useful. Every rule that I've ever learned about headshots, the more I've learned, the more I realize that I shouldn't be held within those rules. Wearing the leopard skin top might be right for some kinds of people.
So just in general, bring everything and then...
Yeah, definitely bring more than you think you're going to need. Let the photographer look at you. We typically have people try some things on so I can see how it fits, how it looks with their coloring. I hold things up. We try to narrow it down. There's a certain point at which you bring too much stuff and you can't even focus on it. But I'd say 3 or 4 outfits per look would be useful to have.
So just to kind of finalize things about wardrobe, I guess the key things to keep in mind is bring more than what you were asked to bring. Always, have plenty of choices. It's much better to bring more than what you need. Make sure everything is, pressed, things look good. Don't rely on the photographer to have an iron at the studio, and especially if you're shooting outside, that might be really tough. And the other key things is make sure that the wardrobe, it's like nice wallpaper. It should enhance your image, but you don't want people staring at it. If people are looking and admiring your clothing or your accessories, that means they're not looking at you and you're taking attention away from yourself.
Right. I mean, it's also important to keep in mind that what looks good on you in real life will probably look good in the photograph. However, you don't want the clothing to be the focal point of the picture. In fashion photography, it's a different story. They're selling clothing. The model is secondary. In your pictures, you want to be the focal point, and you want the clothing to subtly enhance your presence in the picture, maybe help define your character type, and look good with your coloring and the shape of your face.
Okay, let's go back and finish up the interview.
And once the session is done, do people get a DVD or CD, or do you email them the JPEGs, or how does that work?
It's been changing over the years with technology, the way I work it now. The person I shoot, I send them every JPEG from the session the day of the shoot, and I also upload their images to my website, and they have a password where they can log in, they can look at their pictures, mark their pictures, comment on their pictures, share that password with their friends or agents, have them check it out, look at it, make suggestions, make comments. So I try to give people as many different ways of accessing their pictures as possible, so that they can spread out that information to anyone that they want an opinion from.
And so now, do you actually make comments as well, or
Yeah,
will you
yeah.
check off the ones that you like?
No, I think that's really important because A, I've got a lot of experience in this, and B, I know what retouching can do to improve a certain picture, and so within a day or two after shooting someone, they receive an email where I make my choices and my argument for which pictures I think they should choose. They're free to choose any ones they want, but most people want my opinion.
And you mentioned retouching. Is that something that should be done, or is that something we should be careful of having
You
done?
should be extremely careful. It's because of the ability of Photoshop to change someone, you can do anything. You can take the head from one person, put it on another body. You can alter the physical structure of someone's face to an extreme way. That's not useful for a headshot. A headshot is not a goal within itself. It's a key to getting you in the door. The shot is not the product. You're the product. The headshot leads people to the product. Headshot doesn't get the job. You get the job. So you want to keep that headshot real and true to who you are. You're frozen in time, and so there are distractions that can come into a picture that cause people's interest to go to something they would never see in real life. That kind of thing can be corrected. Blemishes, stray hairs, how makeup creases, what little details of how they're captured that just take away from the picture, but never change what you look like. Otherwise, you're just deluding the people who are seeing your picture, and they're going to be irritated by it because they're trying to hire someone based on what they projected themselves to be.
So basically, you have to have the ability to look like that final product.
Yeah.
Even after any kind of
I mean, I hear a lot of agents say to me now, I've started taking before pictures of the people I shoot, before they've been in makeup and hair, before I've done much in terms of fine-tuning the lighting. I want them to see, I want people, agents, managers, casting people to see what they're going to get, but skewed toward the best way to see that person.
So the two key things to remember here, when you're talking about getting copies of your headshot, one thing, typically you're going to ask the photographer ahead of time exactly how you're going to be getting copies, whether they'll print that up for you, whether they just give you a CD. And also, even though people are pretty much using JPEGs all the time, you still need hard copies. Every time an actor goes to an audition, you're going to bring a headshot. Sometimes they don't need it, but always bring the headshot with you. And as far as retouching goes, the key thing to remember is you have to look like your picture when you show up either for the audition or on the set. So if there is any minor retouching done, just make sure it's something that you can do in real life so that you can show up and look just like your photograph.
Right. So it's important to keep in mind that you are the product, not the photograph. You're not trying to sell a picture. You're trying to sell yourself at an audition that picture gets you called in for. As far as copies, you want to make sure that you're using a large file, because the JPEGs that are used to email or to be on the web are 72 DPI copies, which are not sharp enough to make prints of. So you need to make sure that you request of the photographer a 300 DPI TIFF or JPEG image that's large enough to print sharply. With retouching, it's all about subtlety. You want to get rid of distractions because you're frozen in an image, and that can make people more aware of things they would never see in real life. But you want to play true to what you come off like. If you change your age range or you change the structure of your face, you're doing a disservice to the casting people and to yourself ultimately.
Okay, hey, let's go back to the interview.
And just speaking of the headshot also, I've heard people talk about the rights, who owns the rights, whether, you know, you could potentially sell the shot. You know, could you explain that to me?
Whether the photographer could sell the shot?
Yeah. You know, and do you own the rights to the photo? Or?
Legally, the photographer owns the copyright to the picture. However, the photographer cannot use the picture in any commercial way without the okay of the subject. There's a protection on both sides. The person who's being photographed has to understand that they can't use their picture in any way whatsoever. It's a publicity shot. It's priced as a publicity shot.
So they can use it for promotional purposes.
Self-promotion, anything that is related to their acting career. Where the line is drawn is on commercial usage. How, like, for instance, selling their picture. Giving their picture to someone to use in a way that is a commercial use. Could be that the picture is the perfect picture for a national ad campaign for contact lenses. That doesn't mean that that company can use the photographer's picture without compensating them. They should actually compensate both the model and the photographer. So the way I like to explain the rights of photography is very similar, because I want actors to understand it, and so I tell them, think of it from an actor's perspective. If you were to do a job for a film, if you were to be cast in a film, you're playing a certain character, they shoot you a certain couple of days for your role in that film. You get paid for that film. Suppose the director took your performance, put it in a totally different film, didn't even tell you about it, and didn't compensate you. You would be livid, because you were contracted to do a certain amount of work for a certain need. That is the same with photography. The licensing fees of photography have to do with the usage of the picture. And you know, I try to make that clear with everybody I shoot, that I'm happy for them to use their picture on their website and self-promotion and flyers, that kind of stuff. But if they're going to use it on the cover of a book, if they're going to use it as a cover of a DVD, if they're going to have it sold for part of an advertising campaign, then the company who's buying it needs to contact me, or the client needs to contact me and talk about it with me.
Now, is talking about the photo session itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what happens if somebody says, you know, I'm not really happy at the end of the session? What do you do?
Well, that part of it is short-circuited by the aspect of shooting digitally.
So we can see it.
I mean, I shoot tethered to a computer, and I evaluate what is the best way to photograph this person constantly as I'm shooting them, and I supply them with everything I know from 29 years of shooting. All of the experience that I have comes to bear with helpful hints and tips and creating an environment that works for people and that makes them feel comfortable and makes them feel energetic. However, looking at the picture is the best way to know what you're getting. And so I show people constantly during their shoot what I'm getting, and I ask them, especially on like women's hair and makeup, I'll say, is your hair the way you like it? Because there's a certain amount of personal preference to these things that don't have to do with a right or wrong, technically. They have to do with just what does somebody like and what does somebody feel about themselves. It's the psychological aspect of it is a little more difficult, because if you walked up to 10 people on the street and said, do you like the way you look? I bet you 8 of them would say no. But the job of a photographer is to capture those people's faces in a way that they do like. So you have to know a lot, and you have to have a lot of ability to overcome that general sense of people not being totally satisfied with their looks. And it takes some technical expertise, some ability in lighting to bring out the best features in a person, to capture their energy in a way that excites even the person themselves.
So just remember, as far as the copyrights go, whoever finger pushes the button on the camera, they're the ones who owns the copyrights to the shot. Doesn't mean they can sell it without your permission. That would be illegal, but they legally own the rights. So if you do need to go out and make copies, which I assume you will, you might want to ask the photographer for a little release form giving you permission to make a copy of the shot. And the other thing too is, I don't think it's a crazy question to ask a photographer ahead of time, if you're not happy with the photograph, what is your policy? And it might run the gamut from the photographer saying, look, if you're not happy with the shot, I have no control over that. Or a photographer might say, look, I'm going to make sure that you are happy with the shot. But I think it's not even so much what they say and how they respond to your question, but it's really more of the way they go about talking to you about it that I think is really important for you to keep in mind.
Yeah, well, a couple of points about that from a photographer's perspective. Certainly, technical aspects of the photography should be top-notch. The picture has to be in focus. The picture has to be color balanced correctly. The picture has to have an aesthetic value to it. That's what the photographer's responsibility is, and that's where a photographer could fall short through their own fault. After that, there's just how do you look in the photograph. What I do to try to minimize any misunderstanding or any dissatisfaction is to, first of all, do my best, but second of all, I show my clients the photographs in the process that as I'm taking them. I'm going to be shooting in the studio tethered to a computer. We're going to see the shots come up on the screen, and that makes it it makes it really obvious how things look and how you come off. So, it's important to use the technology to preview as you go. When I shoot outside the studio, I'll come back in and download the pictures, and we'll analyze them. We'll say, okay, so, is there something we can do better on your side, on my side, fine-tuning energy, ferreting out angles that are most attractive. That's what makes the fact that the photo shoot, I'm trying to go for that word, is a collaboration, and it's important that each person understand their responsibility. A photographer can't get inside you and turn you into a puppet. They can only encourage you to bring out what you can do.
Great, thanks, Joe. Okay, so let's go back and listen to more of the interview.
And speaking of makeup, so do you recommend that everybody shoot with a makeup artist and a stylist, hairstylist?
Yeah, I recommend, well, there's a translation process. You know, what you look like day to day doesn't photograph the same way it looks to you in the mirror. You're using lights that are brighter than the sun, usually, if you're in the studio. You're using cameras that can pick up every pore. And so it's good to have somebody that can alter your look to the medium that you're being captured in. And that doesn't mean being made over. It doesn't mean being turned into something that you're not. It means just being maximized for the fact that you're going to be photographed in a single image, one point in time, one point in space.
And so basically, a makeup artist will make you look better for the shot.
Make you look better, make you look possibly more clearer, more appropriate, more attractive. You know, beauty in a photograph comes from a lot of different angles. It doesn't necessarily mean the most alluring person. It means beauty can come through honesty, beauty can come through charm, beauty can come through playfulness, beauty can come through soulfulness. Reality can be really beautiful if the technical aspects of the photography maximize that impact.
And so would you recommend that, now I assume like you have your own makeup artist, or should I be looking for my own?
Well, there's a learning curve in how a particular makeup artist applies their makeup for a certain photographer because of their lighting, because of maybe their general approach. So I have my own hair and makeup people. I would never use a hair and makeup artist on a client until I had tested them and had enough experience with them that I knew that they knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that makes sense because your reputation's on the line.
Yeah.
For headshot, you want to make sure that's great.
So about makeup artists, without a doubt, and this goes for both men and women, it's always better to have a makeup artist on the set. Look, I know it's an additional expense, but it's going to make you look better. It's going to make the photograph look better. And the difference of, you know, saving a fairly small amount of money and the difference between possibly getting into a casting because your headshot looks better, or getting representation with an agent because your headshot looks so much better, it's not even any kind of tough call. And the other thing that I would say is, don't try to just bring in your own makeup artist. I would definitely sit down with the photographer and ask the photographer if you know, he or she would recommend a makeup artist that they've worked with in the past, somebody they trust, somebody they like, somebody who knows their work. So that way you know you're going to get a much, much better job done by the makeup artist.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a team effort. I think that people sort of resist the hair and makeup concept when they think that they're giving up some control over how they look. And what's important is that the photographer and the hair and makeup artist realize that you are not getting a makeover. You're getting done for the way that you want to look, but filtered through the process of photography, which is different than real life. The way strobe lights hit skin is a lot brighter than even sunlight, and so you need to adapt to that. You need to be aware that the contour and the way your skin looks to the lighting and to the photography needs to be altered slightly to look right. And having a hair and makeup artist who has experience with that particular photographer is critical. I don't ever work with a hair and makeup artist for the first time with a paying client. It's a recipe for disaster. Even if they're great at what they do, there's a learning curve in how they adapt to what I do even the pace that I shoot at, or the fact that it may be important to me to continue taking some pictures at a time when they want to go jump in and fix some hair or skin issue that may mess up the flow of how I'm shooting.
Great. Okay, so let's go back and watch some more of the interview.
Now, will you print any 8x10s after the session?
Well, everything, hard copy prints are going the way of the dinosaur. Everything now is, the agents are like, send me an electronic file, send me something that I can download. I would say that whereas 10 years ago, every one of my clients would make 100 to 200 copies of their pictures, people are now making 50, 25, and I provide my clients with both a high-resolution version of their image, which they could print from, and a low-resolution version that they can email easily, that can be optimized for use on a computer screen. And that's how most people are seeing my clients' images, on a computer.
Although I guess you still have to bring in a hard copy when you're going to an audition, right?
I guess, I find that a lot of my clients are just skipping that process of hard copies, or making their own prints, or, there's so many different ways to do it. So I provide my clients with an upload to the copy place I recommend, and they can call and order copies. But I also see that most of the work is done electronically.
Now, I know for me it's not really an issue, but somebody did ask if they could bring someone with them to the photo shoot. What's the policy with that?
Well, I don't have policies like I try not to create boundaries in anything I do with people. I want to do what's best for them. So I don't have a lot of hard and fast rules. I have suggestions of what my experience has told me is the best way to work. If someone is underage, I definitely require that they have a parent or guardian there with them.
So that's like under 18?
Yep. If someone wants to have someone there for support, I'm fine with them bringing somebody. What they typically end up doing is consigning that person to another room, because they realize that this is a very focused process. You can't splinter your attention too many ways. And to get the best pictures, you need to get into a zone that is best served by just having the photographer and the sitter working in the same space, and not distracted by anybody else. But it's not unheard of for someone to bring someone, and then typically what I find is that they end up cutting them loose after a while.
So the two areas I wanted to just kind of go over a little bit here is, as far as the copies go, one thing you can always ask the photographer is, if they are going to go out and get all the copies made for you. But I can tell you in most situations, and certainly I'll let Joe talk about it from his perspective, but typically the photographer might suggest some reproduction companies that you might want to go to. The photographer might give you one or two hard copies. But in today's time period, I'm assuming everybody is just going to be given, like Joe was saying earlier, a high res. But it's going to be the actor's responsibility to actually get things printed up. And as far as bringing people to the set, you can always ask the photographer, and I think it's fine if you feel more comfortable having somebody with you. Drive you there or drive with you. But I can tell you, during the shoot itself, you probably don't want anybody else there, just so that you can feel completely relaxed. You're not wondering, hey, is my friend thinking I'm doing something silly? You're going to be feeling a little self-conscious. So, but especially like if you're a kid, if you're a teenager or younger, certainly you're going to have a parent sitting around or somebody sitting around with you. But during the photo shoot itself, once again, for parents, or for friends who are accompanying their talent to the photo shoot. I wouldn't sit in the studio itself during the photo shoot itself. Hey, Joe, how about for you? First of all, as far as the prints go, I mean, do you print up anything for people?
Well, part of my job is to be sort of a consultant on the areas of the process that I'm conversant with and have a lot of experience with. So I don't actually make the prints, but I do make it as easy as possible for my clients to get high quality prints. And the way I do that is to make a suggestion for the place that experience has taught me does the best work for the price. And I also do an upload for my clients of their images to that place so that they can order their copies just by placing a phone call and following instructions that I emailed to them. You can have copies made anywhere you like, and nowadays people, the copy places, the printers who make prints from professional photographers' work will tend to want a release form. So the photographer can either supply that to you at the point that they give you the files, or they can be available to give you that release form if should you need it. So I help people by sending the image to the printer, and also telling them specifics of what they should tell the people who are printing, and I also ask them if they're concerned about the quality and they want me to okay the pictures. I'm happy to have a test sent to me, and I'll deal with the lab on any corrections of quality. I want my stuff to look the best it can possibly look. It's an advertisement for you, it's an advertisement for me. What was your second question, Aaron?
Yeah, and as far as people bringing friends, to the photo shoot.
Oh, right. Okay, so I want people to feel as comfortable as possible in my session. Everything that I do, the way I interact with my clients, is meant to cut down the amount of time it takes for them to feel comfortable and to feel some sort of intimacy that would allow them to open up to the camera. Anytime I shoot people who are younger than 18, I require that a parent or guardian be around for the shoot. After that, it's really up to the person. What I've found is people who feel like they're going to need the support of someone else, when they're in a situation where they feel supported by the photographer and the hair and makeup artist, they tend to relax and want to just have that one-on-one kind of contact that helps keep the client focused on the lens and what they're trying to translate. If you've got this third set of eyes kind of hovering around, it can tend to distract you from what you want to do.
Okay, great. Okay, let's go back to the interview.
Now, I've seen some people's headshots, and I know there's a certain style where the tops of heads are chopped off.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that is a certain style. If I prefer not to have my head cut off, is that something that you and photographers?
Well, it's something that you should talk about up front.
Yeah.
And make sure that you tell the photographer your personal preference. I elicit the personal preferences of every person I shoot before I start shooting. I say to them, is there anything you want to avoid? Is there anything that's your particular, that you don't appreciate? Do you not want a white background? Do you not want an outdoor shot? Do you not want a picture taken from a high angle? Whatever someone's personal preference is, I try to work with it. As far as cropping, what I find is that a lot of people don't understand what cropping can do to a photograph. Cropping into somebody, when you put a frame of the camera around somebody's head, they're contained within that space. And it feels that way. It feels like they are corralled into a frame. If you crop into them, whether it's into their head or close to the side of their head, it adds energy to the picture because the person seems to be moving through that fixed frame. They're not contained within it. The other thing is that there are horizontal shots and there are vertical shots. Horizontal shots means the photographer is framing with the length of the picture going horizontally, like a movie screen, like a TV screen. If you watch TV or films, any close-up, they crop into the person because the perspective of that frame, if you put the top of that frame above the person's head, you automatically go down to the middle of their chest in terms of the perspective. The only way to get a close-up is to crop into them because the width of the picture is longer than the height, and so to get that close-up, you got to come in enough to crop. That's what people are used to seeing. It seems like then when they do a headshot session, they're aware of stuff that they've been used to in other places, but now it's them, and now it's something to really focus your attention on, and it can tend to throw them. And so I try to explain to people how I see framing, but I'll do whatever they want.
So would you be able to actually show somebody, or this is what it would look like if I, crop off part of the
Yeah,
head?
I mean, that's the beauty of digital is that you can explain and give them something to reference immediately, right on the spot.
And so you shoot inside as well as outside as well.
I want to be able to, my job is to master every possible way of shooting. I don't want to be limited by my inability to do something. I want to be able to do whatever might be right for that particular person. So I've spent my entire career learning how to work with natural light, how to work with studio light, how to work with a mix of those, how to shoot three-quarter shots and pose people correctly, how to shoot close-ups and maximize their impact. I want to be able to have the deepest bag of tricks possible so that anyone who comes to me can get something that they're happy with.
Now, I've heard people talk about wanting photos, for their particular area, and I know. So if I want to be working in New York, I know there is a certain style. Maybe you can tell me because I'm not really sure. What's an LA headshot look like that would be different than a New York style headshot?
Well, it used to be a lot more. There used to be a lot more of a difference between those two styles. It's just like anything else. You can go to the farthest point in Africa and probably buy a Justin Bieber DVD. Everything's blending, and so the differences are not as extreme as they used to be. However, in LA, typically it's a natural light shot. They've got beautiful weather all the time, so it's easier for the photographers. The shots are definitely more about sex appeal. It seems like the LA shots are all kind of filtered toward romantic leads and people and glamour. New York tends to be more about drama, more about edgy, more about urban. That's because that's what this is. That's what this place is about. There's more theater in New York, and so there are more theatrical kinds of pictures in the general flux of stuff than there is out in LA. In LA, theater's a rare commodity. So if you want a picture, if my clients tell me, I'm heading out to LA in a couple of weeks, I'll skew how I shoot them toward the market there more.
Now, we're just talking about theater. Somebody had mentioned to me there's something called like legit headshots.
Mm-hmm.
What are the differences between a commercial headshot and a legit headshot?
Commercial headshots define your type within the commercial casting realm. If you watch TV commercials, you can see very clearly defined types of people. There's the everyman, which is the dads, the guys in the backyard with the grill, the guy at Home Depot, the guy who's shopping for a car with his wife. He's a normal, natural guy. He's the guy on the other side of the mirror trying on the deodorant. You've got the athletic types for products that have to do with active lifestyle. You know, the people who are on the mountain bikes, the people who are drinking the Gatorade, the people who are playing basketball. You've got moms, dads. I mean, it's a if you sat down and watched 30 TV commercials, you could identify how they cast people pretty quickly. So you want your picture to fit you into those categories that you're right for. Legit Shot is about you as an actor defining qualities that tell people the types of roles that you're best suited to, whether you're a romantic lead or a character, whether you are more about intensity and edginess and darkness, or whether you're more about lovable, playful fun. And people can blend over, but typically the people I shoot who have the most success identify their strength, fine-tune it, polish it up, and that's what they sell.
So the two areas that people are always asking about, the difference between the LA headshot and the New York headshot, and you know, from what I learned from you, Joe, is it just seems like certainly there are some differences. You know, like you were saying, typically in LA it's more laid back, more natural light, but there's a lot of mixtures today just because people are doing both coasts, and there really doesn't seem to be as big of a discrepancy as there used to be. And there was one other thing that I just wanted to mention before I wanted to get you to comment on that, Joe, was, you know, just kind of summing up the differences between a commercial headshot and a legit headshot. So, Joe, I'll just let you answer both of those again.
Okay. So in terms of, is there a difference between an LA headshot and a New York headshot? Those markets are blending quite a bit because of the internet, because of the flexibility of traveling, cultural things in general are blending. I mean, you can go to a street vendor in, you know, Uganda and buy the same sunglasses that you buy on the street in New York. So everything is blending, and the styles are blending for headshots as well. The New York headshots used to be studio lit, very dramatic, edgy, gritty. That's the New York feel, and that's certainly right for a lot of different types of markets and a lot of different types of parts. But the natural light shots have blended over from LA to New York, and I would say that I shoot, you know, 85–90% of my session with natural light outdoors, not even in the studio. I've ferreted out little locations around my studio that are the magic spots that have the right kind of light at a certain kind of day, or the right kind of feeling for what I'm trying to capture. So I don't think that there's as much a difference between the two coasts headshot styles as there used to be. As far as commercial and legit shots, commercial shots define the types of roles that you play in TV commercials, which are basically broad categories. You've got the family people. Those are the dads, the moms, the kids that sell pop culture products, health products, family products. That's who's going to be selling you cereal and cold medicine and iPods and iPhones. You've got the business people, professionals, people who are in a corporate environment, business office environment, people who are dressed the way people dress to go to a job. So that's jackets, suits, ties, you know, a little bit more polished than what you'd be on a Saturday afternoon. Those are the two major types of commercial shots that I deal with. The casual natural look for the family, health, pop culture products, the more professional look for anything to do with business. The legit shot. um, that is defining qualities that you have as an actor that the audience latches on to in your presence. And so people are either romantic leads, which are the people who are part of the relationship that the show is about, character types, people who are either their best friends or supporting characters. They are people who might have more of an edge, more darker characters, comedic, lighthearted characters. There's actually a great Bob Fraser, I think, is an acting teacher. He may be current in LA, but somewhere on the internet he's got all the different types laid out in a very clear way, and it's kind of interesting to look at.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Joe. Okay, so let's go back to the interview, and then we'll come back in a minute.
And I guess the next to the last thing, because at some point I would like to see, you were talking about before, being able to look at a headshot of somebody in my category. So maybe in a second you can kind of show me, and then we can, I can take a peek at it to see what other kind of actor would be, pretty similar to what I would be doing, so I can get an idea. So I would like to see that. But I guess like for the very last thing, and it's always like a little uncomfortable, but I need to know, what are the costs involved with, having a headshot? And if you could tell me, not only for you, but just in general, like what I could expect to be paying, what kind of range, depending on, even the market and things like that.
Well, the market is quite wide-ranging in the price points. You will find people who are willing to shoot a headshot session for $50, and you'll find people who charge $1,500. The goal of an actor, any particular person, is to find out what price is reasonable to pay with high expectations. The cheaper people tend to be either just starting or inexperienced or a factory who are just cranking out images without really focusing on the individual qualities of the person they're shooting. The people who charge at the absolute top of the scale tend to be working off of hype. They're not necessarily the best photographer. They're the flavor of the month. They're the person who's pushing the marketing hardest. In the middle somewhere is a sweet spot of what is a reasonable amount of money to pay for someone who has a lot of skill and a lot of ability and is applying that to your particular case. When I hire people who do services for me, if I'm hiring a carpenter, if I'm hiring someone to work on my house, if I'm hiring a doctor, I want to get people who are feeling that they're being fairly compensated and take pride in their work and want to do well at their job because they're getting what they deserve. What I don't want is someone who is inflating the price because of their knowledge of perhaps, I live in a town where a lot of people in the town are affluent, and so I know that even though I'm not, the people who supply a service in that area gouge up the prices because they figure because you live there you can afford it. Not always the case. So I would say for headshots, somewhere between $450 and $750 is a reasonable amount of money to pay for quality pictures.
Now, is that in the New York area, or would you say even in smaller markets as well?
Well, probably the smaller markets you can find less expensive people because the markets are smaller. They're not specialists the way they are in New York and LA. New York and LA is the only place where you're going to find people who are headshot photographers, who that's what they do every day, all day. And, there's a lot of places where you'll get a photographer who does portraits, family portraits, that kind of
Right.
stuff, and yeah, and then they also do headshots. But there's a big difference between those kind of people's ability and their knowledge of the market, and the people who do it for a living and live and die by how well they do it. So I'd say, I charge. What I've done is structure my fees so that anybody can afford to get a great shot. What adds money to the fee is how many looks they want to shoot. I think it's smarter to have one great shot than to have 4 okay shots, because people will tell you those kinds of a great shot can open up doors, can provide a person with possibilities that they could never get through a mediocre picture. This is your avatar. This is your representation in the world as an actor, and the stronger you can make it, the more impactful you can make it, the better chance you have of getting work. And so I would invest some money up front and get a good photographer, because $200 or $300 difference is not going to mean a lot if roles start to come in, if jobs start to come in. I mean, one TV commercial will wipe out any debt that you could create in doing a headshot by far.
And I guess saving, $75 or $100 and not getting representation and not being seen by casting directors.
You just wasted the money that you did spend, even if it wasn't much.
So just to talk a little bit about the cost of a headshot session. Look, I think it's a very important question. You've got to ask every headshot photographer. And I think the key thing to keep in mind is don't base everything on the price. Just because somebody, and this is like in real life, just because somebody is very expensive doesn't mean they're any good. And because somebody is inexpensive doesn't mean that they're not very good. But the key thing is, you need to find out, you need to compare, you need to shop around, and then you can make a wise decision. So certainly listen to what they have to say about their price, but that really shouldn't be a major decision maker as to who you want to shoot with. How about for you, Joe? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's important that you choose a photographer who is invested in the product that they create. And normally the lower price photographers, you're going to find either someone who's just starting, which doesn't mean they're not talented, but it does mean that they don't have the experience perhaps to handle a lot of the different kinds of situations that arise in a photo shoot, or that they are pricing themselves low because they do a great volume of people very quickly and can't put the time in and take care of each person personally. Beyond that lower echelon, there are a lot of photographers in a range from $350 to $850 who are competent professional photographers. And then beyond that, you get people who are kind of existing on reputation or hype, and just because someone is $1,100 doesn't mean they're going to take a better picture than someone who's $750. How do you figure that out? How do you figure out where the value is in your budget? It's a difficult part of this process because you're dealing with trying to become an expert in photography, and there's a lot to how photography works, how it comes together. But what you can do is try to focus on a couple of important things. One, does the photographer seem to be proud of their work and want to put a lot of effort out for you? Two is there something about their work that is appealing on just a personal level to you? This is about putting out a statement that you want people to respond to. And so if you're responding to their work, there's a good chance that the people who are receiving the pictures on the other end will respond to their work. Another thing to be aware of is, do they have depth in the type of styles that they shoot in? Are they repeating the same approach over and over again on every person who comes in, which tends to end up making more of a statement about who you went to as a photographer than who you are. And, you know, is there like a range of ages and types in what they shoot, or do they specialize in one particular thing? So those are things that you should be aware of when you're out shopping for a headshot photographer.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. All right, so let's go back to the interview, and we'll be talking real soon.
So are there any questions, you know, somebody coming in interviewing a headshot photographer, or any questions that I missed that you think I didn't touch on that I...
You know what the first question I would ask a photographer is? Are you proud of your work? Because you need to find people who are invested in what they do, you know, who have a sense of self-pride, are not there just to get a payday, but are there who want to create something beautiful, something useful, something that's a work of art. That's the way I look at it. I mean, every day that I come to work, I think to myself, when I pick up this camera, I have an opportunity. And that opportunity is do something great, do something that makes me feel good and makes the client feel good. I want my people to leave at the end of the day and say, wow, that was not only an incredible experience, but I got everything I wanted out of this shoot, and it even surprised me what I got.
You know, I guess the other thing too that I just thought of, and it's not even a question to ask a headshot photographer, it's more of when you walk out of there and you start thinking, did I feel comfortable with this person? Was the person listening to my questions? Was the person giving me good feedback and information as to the kinds of categories that I should be in? Or was I feeling like I was kind of wasting the person's time and they were just like taking millions of phone calls? Because I guess ultimately what it really boils down to is, do you have the skills, or does the photographer have the skills to make you feel comfortable and relaxed during the session? Because if that's not happening, it doesn't matter how technically good the photo is, the actor is not going to look very good if they're just not feeling at ease.
Well, we have a term that we joke about. We call what we experience with shooting someone photo love. We say that we have to fall into photo love with every person that we shoot. It means that I find something about the person I'm shooting that is compelling and that drives the energy that I put into the shoot. It's not like romantic love. It's over, you know, it's not going to follow you out the door, but it's the enjoyment of the experience and the enjoyment of kind of unwrapping the person as a subject and finding the best stuff about them. And I think that people begin to feel comfortable when they feel that the person they're with has their best interests at heart and is committed to helping them and has no other interests beyond that. You know, one of the most useful ways of looking at a photo shoot is you have to feel totally taken care of and protected, and not any sense of threat, whether the threat is that you are being taken advantage of financially, or that you're being psychologically manipulated, or that you are in some way being used by the person you're with. So our job is to be totally open, upfront with everything that we want to do and get out of that person, and make it clear to them that we're there to help.
You know, it's always important to ask a photographer if there are any headshots that the photographer has taken that's similar to your category, so you can get a better idea of what that person would look like. And I know, Joe, you showed me this one, and actually we were able to see it right now. And yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, this is a guy who's in my category. Doesn't look just like me, but that's not important. You know, what is important is I could see this guy going after some very similar kinds of roles that I would be considered for. So, for instance, Joe, what kind of roles would you see him going after?
Well, what he's presenting is more of a kind of a casual, everyman, guy next door type look, which is, I think, your meat and potatoes. Although, what makes you even more interesting to me as a presence is that your facial structure and the way you look and talk gives a slightly more characterish, quirky possibilities, and that's a big plus. And really, what I want your entire audience to understand is there are no bad types. You don't need to change who you are to be marketable. You just have to recognize who you are and then buff it up and polish it and learn what it needs to. How do you turn it into a laser beam of something that attracts attention and gets you cast? And
yeah, I mean, basically,
that's, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, basically, use your strength. Whatever you have, that's what you want to use, and use it for everything that you can, because there is a role out there for everybody. So, Joel, I think we're ready to wrap this up and start going right into answering any questions that people have. Joe, are you ready to answer some questions?
Bring it on, bring it on.
Okay, great.
We're ready for some questions, and I've got Joe and Aaron both on audio right now for them to answer your questions live. Some questions have been coming in live on the air, so if you have a question, feel free to scroll down on your screen to the little question area there, and feel free to type in your name, your question, and we'll be able to ask those live on the air to Aaron and Joe. So that's the place you can ask questions. Some questions have already come in. Joe and Aaron, can you guys hear me okay on the audio? Is it coming through?
Absolutely.
All of us
sounds
together?
Great.
Fantastic.
I can hear you perfectly.
Great. Well, that's good. So let's dive into some questions here. Again, if you've got a question, there's a form right on the screen for you to ask the question, and that's the place where you can do it. So let's just jump right in here. Stephen asks, we haven't talked about black and white versus color. What are your thoughts?
All right. You want me to take that, Aaron?
Yeah, Joe, why don't you start on that one?
All right. Well, when I started shooting headshots 100 years ago, black and white was definitely the currency that actors used. And, the reason was that it was a lot more expensive to print color photographs than it is now. I've been shooting digital for about the past 9 or 10 years, and everyone switched over to color headshots about 7 or 8 years ago because the technology caught up and the cost and the quality became not a problem. Every time you're cast, unless it's a Woody Allen movie, you're going to be in color. And seeing you in color allows people to see specifics about your coloring. Not just that your eyes are light, but that they're light blue or light green. Not just that your hair is medium, but it's reddish medium. And that's the way you're going to read in the markets that you're going to actually work in. So also, as much as I love black and white, and I do fine art photography purely in black and white, when you put a black and white headshot next to a color headshot, the color headshot wins.
And, and the one thing I was just going to add to that, and I agree with you 100%, Joe, something that I've always been curious about, it seems like some things go in cycles. And, there was a time period where there was the headshot was from the chest to the top of the head, and then things changed and they started doing, half body and 3/4. And then some people start going back to the tighter shots because of, so many actors' headshots being on websites. And then there were glossy finishes, and then there were, not glossy finishes on the headshot. So, for the past number of years, everybody is doing color. It wouldn't shock me if at some point in the future, and it would probably start in Los Angeles, where people would start saying, We got to get back to this black and white. That's the purest kind of headshot. But if you are considering doing a headshot now, yeah, without a doubt, you want to shoot it in color.
Right. One thing that kind of leads me to think about it and might be important for people to understand is that a lot of the stuff that has to do with the style of headshot photography is purely window dressing. It's, the flavor of the month. What is important is the information in your shot and what it says about you as an actor. I think it's a really critical thing to use a three-quarter shot if you need to show your body in how you get cast. If there's something about your physical presence that determines the kinds of roles you're right for, a super muscular guy, a buxom woman, a heavy-set person. Close-ups, they do those in film for a reason. You get a much deeper access to the intensity of a person through close-ups. So a little bit of both is right if it's right for that particular person.
It's funny you mentioned that, Joe. I was auditioning for a feature film in New York yesterday, and I was walking over to the casting office, and I saw this guy. He must spend 23 hours a day in the gym, because this guy, his biceps were bigger than my waist. I mean, they were huge. And so, I don't know if the guy's an actor or not, but that's an interesting point, that if you did a really tight shot from the chest up, and if that is, and I would assume that that's a very important selling point for this guy, then you would need to be able to show it in the headshot.
Yeah, it's whatever makes you strong, interesting, more understandable as an acting presence. That's what you need to show in your picture.
And one thing just on top of that is that I guess also, if you know that your headshot's going to go on an agent's website, maybe you could have two versions of that shot. Maybe for the agent's website, because one of the problems, if you do half body shots on an agent's website, your face kind of gets lost a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that would concern me. But maybe at least when you are showing up at auditions and you're handing in a headshot, then maybe you could, have the half body shot. But, sometimes when people are just flipping through JPEGs really quickly, your face can get lost quite easily if it doesn't stand out.
Yeah, everything on the web should be a close-up for the most part, but there's definitely a trend toward headshots that have more specificity to them. When I first started shooting, the idea was to get a general kind of shot, but because things are mostly electronic now and are able to be shown on the screen, in multiple images, sometimes people are wanting more specific versions of themselves and numerous ones so that they can show all of the different aspects of their presence and let the person connect the dots.
Great. Thanks, guys. So just want to let Mariah know. Mariah, you it looked like you had tried to enter a question earlier. I didn't get a question, just your name came through. So if you did have a question, you're going to need to resubmit that. And for anyone that has a question, just below this video, there's a space there for you to enter your questions. We can read live over the air. Okay, so let's go to Elena has a question here. Hi, Aaron and Joe. My question would be about expressing yourself through the photo. I know how important it is to show your expressions or emotions in the shot, especially if you're trying to pursue different looks or roles. Do you recommend maybe taking some acting classes to learn basic skills before scheduling a session with the photographer? Thank you very much, Elena.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be very helpful to you because, it's true, and Joe certainly can talk about this, really great headshot photographers do have the ability to pull out the expressions that are needed. But if you do have those skills, it will make it a much easier and even more powerful kind of session. And as a matter of fact, if you go back to my website, howtomodel.com, on the home page there, all you have to do is type in your email address and the state you live in, and you'll get this video. There's a technique that I created which kind of shows you this technique of looking away, thinking of a real experience of your life that will give you the emotion that you're trying to hit, and then bring it up to the camera. And you can easily also, even in my book, How to Become a Successful Commercial Model, I talk about this exercise and ways that you can practice it. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more skilled of an actor you are, the better your headshot can be. And having said that, let me also let you know, and I've said this to Joe, headshots scare me to death. I don't like doing headshots. If you hired me and you told me what kind of look you need, what you're going after, what's happening in this particular ad or something, I can do that. But when it comes to shooting me and having to express my specific emotions and what I'm trying to go after, and there's pressure and you want to make sure you're getting the right look, it is really, really hard. And actually, Joe, and I did work with Joe, and he really was, he was great. He was just made the process so easy for me. But, it's not an easy thing to do. And if by chance you finish the session, you're going to get a whole lot of different looks. And as long as you're working with somebody who's great, and like Joe had also mentioned, that you're able to see the shots, before you leave, at least you'll know that you've got something that really works well for you. But absolutely, being able to tap into some basic emotions and be able to show them in a believable way, that will really help you tremendously before your photo session.
Yeah. That was Elena, right, who asked that question?
That's correct. Yeah, Elena asked that.
Okay. One thing I want to add, I mean, certainly taking acting headshots can't hurt, especially if you're looking to have a career in acting. But one of the easiest ways to express yourself in a headshot is to get outside of your own head. What I do is I talk with my people a lot as I'm shooting so that they're relating to me and not just thinking about the process. And it frees you. It makes you unself-conscious, which is the main thing that happens when people are confronted with a camera. They suddenly become hyper-conscious of their own face, their own kind of place in the universe. And I try to pull them out through direction and talking to them in a way where they're reacting and not necessarily having to generate something out of the void toward the camera. So,
well, I was just going to mention, the other thing that Joe does that's really great is that he'll spend some time with you prior to shooting. So, and this is something that any great headshot photographer should be doing. So he has a real clear understanding of who you are, what areas of the industry you want to be working in, what are your strengths, how are you going to be promoting yourself, what look will get you the most kind of work. And by having that information, he's able to say the right words to you to get the right kinds of expressions because he knows what you need. And so that's something that every great headshot photographer should be doing. And now it might not be the norm, but that's really what you want.
Yeah.
Great.
Well said.
Jerry from Canada asks, what are some red flags I should be looking for in a photographer? How do I avoid scams?
You want to take that first, Aaron?
Sure, I can start off with that one. That's a very complicated question. I can tell you in our industry, it's very easy to be scammed, especially if you don't have the right information, and it holds true not just for photographers, but for agents as well, or people who call themselves agents. I'll tell you a couple of things that I would be thinking of prior to even considering hiring a photographer. One is, even before you necessarily talk with them, check out their website. And even though you still don't know 100% sure that those are the photographs that that photographer took, but let's just go on the assumption that this is the person's work. So then you start looking at the pictures, do they look like good headshots? And even if you don't know anything technical about photography, still you can see, do the people look alive? Are their eyes talking to you? Do you see shadows or things out of focus? So that's one of the things that I would do ahead of time. If you possibly could talk with any of the people who were shown on the website, that would be great too. And I tell you, the one other thing that would concern me, if a photographer demanded that you pay the entire fee up front before the session, that would make me a little bit nervous. Now, it's one thing if you finish the session, you're at the studio, and before you get any of the CDs in your hand, that you've got to pay. Or even if there's a deposit that you have to leave. I get that one too. But to have to pay everything up front, before you leave that day, at least unless you have the photos in your hand, that would make me a little concerned, just because then there's really no guarantee that the person's going to give you the photos that were shot.
Yeah. Well, I would say I think it's incredibly rare that someone who's up there as a photographer on the internet would be a scam, in the sense that they are not going to provide what they say they'll provide, or that they are going to take your money and run. But I think what people run into a lot is just their own inability to tell the difference in quality for what's out there. And one way to get past that is to expose yourself to a lot of different photographers' websites, so that you start to make sense of and become aware of the differences in different photographers' work. There's an aesthetic aspect to how headshots are done. They should look interesting to your eye. And there's also the informational aspect, which is, can you look at someone's pictures on their website and picture what kind of work that person would be good for, or what kind of roles they would play? And you begin to start becoming aware of the finer differences between what makes just a mediocre photographer and what makes somebody who's really working at the top of the game.
And this just kind of came into my mind because I was sent information about a scam. Now, this had to do with a modeling job, but it did deal with the photographer. And I'll make a very, very, very long story really short. The windup was somebody sent me a notice saying that they saw my photos. They want to hire me for an ad campaign that's going to be running throughout Europe. And basically what they were going to do was, instead of flying me to Europe to do the shot, they were going to send the photographer and the makeup artist to me. And so I knew this entire thing was a scam, but I just wanted to see exactly how they did it. And it was very intriguing, and I thought they were very smart about it. And basically what they told me was they were going to pay me $10,000 for the job. And because this photographer or makeup artist, they're traveling so much, they were going to include the extra $5,000 in my check to pay the photographer and the makeup artist when they came to do the shoot. And the way that the scam works is you get this check, and it's written out on a regular check. You cash it, and you pay the photographer and the makeup artist their $5,000. And then 2 days later, 3 days later, you get a phone call from your bank saying the check isn't any good. You're out the money, and they're gone. So when you're just talking about scams, that was one that I noticed on the internet. And I got, actually, they sent me information twice. And I went through the whole thing because I just was really curious to see how they would do it. And when I said, hey, guys, listen, I'd love to do this shot with you, but I don't pay photographers and makeup artists on my own, then I stopped hearing from them. So that's one thing you just might want to watch out for.
Yeah, wow.
So Susan has a question. You touched on this a little bit, but maybe you can elaborate more. She says, are sites like Casting Networks and Agency Pro more used by agents and casting directors now than printed headshots and resumes today?
Wow.
Well, there are a lot of websites like that, and you still need a great headshot, no matter whether you're going to have a printed headshot done or not. So if I understand your question correctly, maybe it's really, do you need to reproduce as many headshots now as you used to because of so many different websites where things are just sent electronically? And the answer is, yeah, it's true. You don't need to print as many. And I'm going back maybe 15 years before, websites were used almost exclusively by agents. I would print up sometimes 2,000 headshots, a couple thousand composite sheets, simply because every agency that I worked with, and I worked with multiple agents, they all needed anywhere between 25 and 40 headshots and 25 and 40 comp cards, because they were sent out all the time, either through carriers or they would physically put them in the mail. So if I understand your question correctly, still, absolutely, every time you go to an audition, you're going to bring a headshot. There are times where the casting director will say, hey, we already have all your information in the computer, you don't have to hand one in. But most of the time, you will be handing a headshot to the casting director. So you always need them, but now I might print up 250 at a time instead of a couple of thousand.
Right, and there's one other aspect to this, which is that you will always need hard copy, but you can also make different formats of that hard copy. People make business cards that have their headshot on it. People make postcards that they can send to people to remind them that they met or to alert them to an upcoming show that they're in. So it's good to have a little arsenal of ways that you can leave people with something physical for them to remember you or file away for future use. Definitely electronic submissions is taking over, and the places that make the copies probably aren't doing a tenth of the business that they were doing in the 90s. It's good to master your own personal software that allows you to use your image in the best way possible, to optimize the size of it, the DPI of it, which is the resolution of it. Things that go on the internet have to be 72 DPI. Things that need to be printed have to be 240 or 300 DPI. So you need, all actors are going to eventually need to learn what that is, what I just said, and learn to master it, because it'll make their lives easier. And it's not difficult. It sounds, intensive and scientific, but it's not. It's just really simple stuff.
And you're right, Joe, because there are agents and casting directors who simply won't look at your headshot if it's in too large of a format when you're sending it. And they'll just delete it because it's taking too long to open, or when they do open it, all they see is a nose. So, you do have to make sure that you do have that technique down and you've got those skills to make sure that the headshot is small enough that you can easily email and it still looks good.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand that too large of a file cannot be emailed. So if you're trying to attach an image to your email that's over 10 megs, chances are the email box that you're sending it to will not accept it, and the email program that you're going to use will not transfer the image.
Okay, thanks guys. So we're getting a couple questions in, similar related. So let me just kind of combine these here, and then I'll ask you about them. So Brina asks, she's from Boston, and she's got some questions about, okay, I'm in Boston, do I do more of a New York headshot? Do I do more of a Los Angeles type headshot? And then Barbara asks, if traditional LA headshots show more sex appeal and New York headshots project more, edginess, even though they're not as different as they used to be, how do I decide which one to lean toward? Because I'm near neither one of those major markets, or does it even matter? Do I just pick one and then go from there? So maybe you guys want to address that kind of issue. Is it New York, LA? Which one do they go for?
Joe, why don't you go on this one?
Well, I don't really think that the difference is that extreme nowadays, and I don't think it's going to make a difference I don't really think there is such thing as an extremely different LA and New York headshot anymore. So I wouldn't really worry about that aspect of it. I think what I would do is try to make sure that your headshots play to the current market that you're working in, which is important. If you're going to stay in that area or keep that as a home base, you want to address what types of work is most cast in that area. Like Boston, I travel to Boston every couple of months to shoot. I'm going to be there on November 16th and 17th shooting sessions. And I understand, what makes the Boston market a little bit different than the New York market. And it's not an extreme difference. It's maybe they're a little more conservative. Boston has a lot of corporations and they do a lot of corporate image films and industrials, so that business look is pretty important in the Boston area. The legit shots in Boston are also a little bit more conservative for the most part, but it's not a huge difference. And I think you need to just get great headshots. They play anywhere.
And having said that, I think that, because I think it was you who had mentioned something about, the more sexy LA type look. Yeah, I mean, being in the Boston or whether you're in the New York area, I don't know if that would open up as many doors for you as it would in LA. So if you're not thinking about going to LA, then it does seem to make sense to get the type of look that is being used in your particular area.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Also, just question from Steven asks, vertical portrait versus horizontal landscape format. Is there any kind of recommendations you have on that? Any thoughts you have about that?
I'll answer that first if you don't mind, Aaron.
Not at all.
All right. So this is one of the least understood aspects of how the pictures are taken and used. Some people say casting people are loath to turn the picture 90 degrees to see what you look like. If they're going through a pile of vertical shots and they come across a horizontal shot, it's going to somehow throw them off. I don't necessarily buy that. I think, it's a fairly simple process to turn a picture. But here's something to consider. Film and television are horizontal formats. When you watch a TV screen, you're watching horizontal. When you go to a film, you're watching horizontal. And that space on the sides around a head can be used in a lot of creative ways, and it also just gives you a familiar impression. You've seen a million close-ups on film and TV that have that horizontal look to them, and so the picture feels like something you're familiar with. I shoot a mix of both throughout the whole session, and they can also kind of be tweaked. I mean, if you shoot a horizontal shot and you like it vertical, it can be cropped to make a vertical. It's not impossible to do. But it also comes down to personal preference. Some people a lot of people lock into what they know as being what's right. And it's not necessarily the case. I've been shooting headshots for 29 years. The more I know about the business, the less I'm aware of rules. So, the point is make the impact, choose whatever way is something that you're comfortable with, and don't worry about too much what the going style is. You don't want to become just another person repeating a style blindly. You want to use the style of the headshot for what your personal strengths are.
And something else that you can also do is ask, your agent if you have contacts with any of the local casting directors in the area. And maybe just pose that question to them. Are they okay with, horizontal headshots, or would that be any kind of problem for them, or what their thoughts are? And maybe get some feedback that way. The other thing too, just to keep in mind, especially if you are in a more conservative kind of area and you're trying to do, the training films, the industrial films, maybe some of those people who might be involved in the decision making who perhaps aren't quite as creative, who are looking for the more standard kind of look, well, they might be more agreeable to, having a vertical headshot. I don't know, but, it depends on the area, the type of work you're trying to get, but, maybe just trying to get some information ahead of time would be helpful. But Joe, I love your idea of doing both and seeing which shot looks best.
One other thing about doing both is that some of the websites that are casting websites do have a standardized way that they orient the images, and so having both in your session will allow you to pick and choose images that work with the layout of a particular website too.
Good point.
Okay, great. Adar in London, UK. He's asking, if an agent tells me that I have to shoot with the headshot photographer they recommend, or they won't represent me, what should I do?
I would say put on your running shoes and start looking for another agent. It's one thing for an agent to say, hey, look, there's a headshot photographer that a lot of our talent uses. The guy or the woman does a great job. We love this photographer's work. We really recommend that you work with this photographer because he understands our style, or she understands our style, and they know all that would be great. But if you're given an ultimatum of not being able to be represented by that agent if you don't shoot with their photographer, that would make me very nervous, because ultimately it shouldn't make any difference who takes the photo. What the agent needs is an incredible headshot that will help market you and get you work, or get you into the doors for getting work, which will make the agent money. So that would make me very, very nervous if I heard that ultimatum from an agent.
Yeah, I think that that's true for acting agencies that represent actors. It's also true for modeling companies. There are just a ton of people out there who are gaming the system and requiring upfront money to sign you up into an agency whose job should be to find you work, not to cost you money. So I would be a little bit leery about it. I don't know. I mean, maybe that particular agency has found some brilliant photographer that they think is a great deal, but requiring it is the red flag. Suggesting it, maybe saying you should go check this person out because we've found that they do great work, that's a much different situation than saying you have to go to our photographer. That smacks of kickback, and that smacks of a scam.
Yeah, typically, what most agents will say to you is, here's a list of a couple of headshot photographers in our area that have done, incredible things, for our talent. So why don't you check these people out? I highly recommend them. That's great. But yeah, if they're not going to represent you unless you shoot with their photographer, that really concerns me.
Okay. A couple more questions here, and then after these questions, Aaron, I guess I ask you and Joe kind of to, after the question session, our session is over, if you guys would kind of just give us, some last, go forth into the world recommendations and kind of close us out. But let me ask a couple of questions before we get to that portion. This is from Jill in California. Just a simple question. I just got my headshot taken, but I decided to change my hair color. Does that mean I need to go and get new headshots taken?
I'll start off with this one. Well, I guess the real question is, how easily can you change your hair color? If it's the kind of thing where you can make that change overnight, then no, I don't think you have to go out and get another headshot. If it's something that's so drastic that is permanent, or something that you really wouldn't be able to do to make yourself look like that headshot, yeah, then perhaps you would have to get another headshot, because basically people are bringing you in because of the way that you look. And if your headshot looks a certain way, you have to be able to look like that photograph when you are going into an audition, or sometimes you get booked for a job. So if you do make that color change, number one, I would tell your agent right away, just to inform the agent. And if you do get an audition or a booking, once again, tell your agent, hey, I just want to let you know, I did change my hair color. Is that going to be a problem? Do I need to change it back to the color of my headshot? And if so, then you will.
Okay, my answer to that is that it's not really possible to change your hair color in a photograph that's already been taken and make it 100% believable. So if part of your question was, is there a way to alter the picture to what my current hair color is, I've had people come in with that situation, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's a very it's a tough process to make it believable and to really look realistic. So ideally, you want to make those changes before you do a photo session, but realistically, people are refining their looks all the time, and people get their hair cut in different lengths or change their hair color after their headshot session, and sometimes it's a smart decision to make that change. Then I think it's a smart thing to get a new headshot, because you want your picture to represent what you're going to bring in the door. It saves people a lot of time, and it keeps people happy in the casting world when you are represented in an accurate way in your shot.
Okay, thanks, guys. All right, so this is something, I pulled this one because I think it's going to be really important for our guests to hear. This is Jeff in Chicago talking about children. He says, I'm a parent of a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old. So many people say that both of them should be in commercials. I guess he'd like to get them into commercials, but his question is, do I need to get headshots taken for both of my children?
All right. Well,
and have you ever shot a 1-year-old before, Joe?
Yeah, I have shot 1-year-olds, and I get calls all the time from people. I shoot a lot of children, and I get calls a lot of times from people who want to know whether they should sign their kid up, a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, for a headshot session. Even though it costs me money, my answer is, there are some people whose budget allows for the fact that A, they'll have a great headshot if they shoot with a professional photographer, and B, they'll have a great headshot for all time, for just a record of their kid at that time. But it's not necessary. I tell them, look, you can go to Sears and get a picture of your kid and market your kid that way, because at that age, every 3 months the kid's looking different, and that aspect of it makes your headshots have a very short shelf life. So if it's in your budget to do it, and if you aren't bothered financially by the idea of spending a nice chunk of money on getting a young kid's headshot, then go ahead. But there are other avenues, and I don't think that you're going to be shunned if you were to bring in a shot taken in a much cheaper kind of one of those photo mill type places.
Yeah, everything that I've been told from managers of kids and agents of kids, if you have an infant, like Joe was saying, the child's going to look different by the time you finish the session, choose the photo, get them printed, and start sending them out. So basically what they just want like plain snapshots and date them, so that way everybody knows what your child looks like today. Now, what I've been told is, like, once you start hitting, 5, 6 years of age, 7 years of age, that might not be a bad idea to get a professional headshot, because now I realize that headshot isn't going to have the same kind of lifespan as somebody who's much older, but maybe that would work for 6 months. I don't know that it would work for a full year, and that's going to really be your decision as to how much your child changes and how quickly they change. But really, it does seem like at 5, 6, or 7, that would be old enough to do a professional headshot. But certainly, any kind of infant, a year, 2 years of age, 3 years of age, even 4. I don't know. I think that you'd be doing yourself a disservice because those photos would not represent what your child looks like, in 2-3 months from the time of the shooting.
Yeah, and one more thing to consider is just, is the kid bringing in that much money that it justifies the expense? If you've got a kid who's booking things left and right and you really want to promote them as a professional, then it might be a good idea to do a professional session. But if you're just starting out or testing the water, you can do it at a lot less of an expense by getting into a Sears or a Costco or someplace where they take pictures and just getting something that's nice of your kid currently that doesn't break the bank.
Very good. All right, let's go one more question. After that, Aaron, I'm going to ask you to kind of wrap us up.
Okay.
And then I've got a few mentions, just some housekeeping things and some other things that are coming up for all the guests that I think are going to be really interesting for them. But let's do this first question here, and then we'll have you wrap it up, and I'll go into some of my stuff. This is Jerry from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Welcome.
Welcome, Jerry. Man, we got people from all over the place on this session. So this is a little bit on the other side of the coin, and Joe, this person's not going to be any competition for you because they're in Johannesburg. But the question is, I'm just getting started in the photography business. Can you give me a general idea of what would be the basic equipment I would need to start a headshot studio and what the costs would be? And you guys want to take that?
So that's to me.
That's to you, Joe.
All right, so here goes my Johannesburg market. I'm just throwing it away with this answer. I can't possibly answer all that in one quick take, but I can tell you that the output of cost is going to be substantial enough that you need to have, I would say, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 set aside to be able to do it on even an entry level if you have all the different products. But there are places on the internet that can teach you about how to set yourself up as a photography studio. If you can't find those places, you could try also Kelby Training, KELBY training.com has a lot of information about photography and about photography related stuff. They may have something about setting up a studio, I'm not sure. But if you hit brick walls on everything, drop me an email and I'll tell you what I know.
Actually, Joe, would you give out your email address?
It's joe@joehenson.com, joe@joehenson.com.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. Aaron, let's have you wrap us up a little bit, give us some pointers, give us some next steps, just conclude it, and then I've got a few things I need to say here as well.
Okay, sure. Well, first of all, Joe, I just want to thank you so much again for being a part of this workshop. Your information it's just invaluable, and your work is incredible. I love my new headshot, and other people have commented about it as well. So thank you for that. Basically, what I would suggest for everyone to do is when you're ready for a new headshot, or you're getting ready to, the process of putting together a new headshot, don't rush through it. Don't feel pressured. Take your time with it. It's like anything else. You need to find a great headshot photographer and feel free to, interview people, sit down with people. It's kind of like, I remember when I was looking for a pediatrician, for my kids. We interviewed a bunch of people, and the person that we wound up with was the person that answered my questions in the best way, that made me feel most comfortable, the person who wasn't, pressuring me in any way, and also really seemed to listen to what I was asking. So make sure that whichever photographer, whether it's with Joe or whoever you decide to go with, is somebody who is really hearing you, can explain things to you, can give you good suggestions as to what kinds of areas would be good for you, what is your character type, can give you great ideas about clothing and wardrobe and different kinds of looks. But really what it all boils down to is, assuming that the person's a great shooter, is that it's somebody who can relax you, somebody who creates a warm atmosphere, somebody that you trust, and somebody that you can really, really relax with. And so, as difficult as a process as this can be, and like I said earlier, they can be hard, and there's a lot that goes into putting together a great headshot. But really, take your time with it, enjoy the process, and when you walk out with an incredible headshot, that is probably the most important part of your career, aside from the talent that that you need to have. But without a great headshot, it is really, really difficult to have success. So enjoy it, and best of luck. And just like Joe was saying, if you guys have any questions at all, always feel free to either go to my Facebook page, which is the facebook.com/howtomodel, or you can always email me as well, Aaron, Aaron, at howtomodel.com.
Thanks, Aaron, and thanks, Joe. This has been a great session. Again, we've got people from all over the world here today listening in. You guys, congratulations. You're taking the step to get the education, the training, the information. You're taking action on your career, which is incredible, because really that first step of taking action is where you go. That will launch you into success just by taking action and moving forward, what so many people just dream about. So congratulations on that. Like Aaron mentioned, we have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/howtomodel. And for everyone that goes over to the Facebook page and leaves a comment about this workshop, you just mention something about specifically what you learned, not fluff, but specifically something you learned, like, hey, I learned this one thing, or these couple things here. Here's how I'm going to put them into action. For everybody that leaves a comment, we're going to give you a free gift. Aaron has decided that he'd like to give you a free gift for doing that. So head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/howtomodel. And also be watching out for more workshops. Our next workshop is going to be talking about how to get paid acting and modeling work. It's going to be talking about all the aspects of marketing yourself with or without an agent. We're going to be covering different ways, maybe the ideas of getting work that you've never thought of. For example, like industrial films. We're going to be talking about how to get murder mystery acting jobs, entertainment company jobs, all sorts of promotional work, different ways to get work. Plus, we're going to be talking about how to get paid acting and modeling jobs that are traditional as well. So be watching out for that. If you're a season pass holder, you are automatically getting that workshop. So if you're not a season pass holder, I encourage you to get on our season pass list, because that is an incredible promotion, a very inexpensive way to get all of Aaron's trainings coming up. So go check out that, more information. You can find all this information at howtomodel.com. That's where you can find the links and resources for the different products and services and trainings that Aaron offers. And also, don't forget to go over to Joe Henson's website. It's joehenson.com. Check out all the headshots he's done there, and you can find out more information about his shooting rates and the different sessions you can schedule with him if you're in the New York City area or you'd like to travel in to have him do some headshots with you there. Just one more thing here. If you're really serious about taking your career to the next level and you are wanting to put it on the fast track, you'd like some special attention from Aaron. He does do limited private coaching, one-on-one, either phone, via Skype, but he connects with you one-on-one if you're out of the area, or if you're in the Mid-Atlantic area, you can do it even in person, but primarily over the internet or over the phone. Private coaching, if you're interested in that, send him an email. You can email him at aaron@howtomodel.com, aaron@howtomodel.com. Again, this is very exclusive. This is very limited. Be sure to put in the subject line private coaching very clearly, or he might not see that you want private coaching, so make sure you put that very clearly in there so he knows, because he gets inundated with a lot of requests for that. That way he can make sure to give you some special attention and see if he can find a time slot this month for you if he's not already booked up. Again, howtomodel.com. Go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/howtomodel to leave a comment. Again, thanks everybody. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Joe. This has been a great session. We look forward to talking with everybody at our next workshop coming up. And thanks, guys.
All right,
Talk to you
great.
very
Thanks
soon.
a lot for having me.
Have a wonderful day.
It was fun.
All right,
Thanks.
take care.
Bye.